be a bit of a football expert, you've got to have a good voice. You've got to hold your audience, so you've got to have that element of excitement. Somebody wants to listen to you, and you've got to hold that audience. But the fact is that anyone coming into the industry now, it's saturated with commentators. Yeah. And if you want to play ball with those guys, you've got to be as good, if not better than them. A good commentator is good at moving away from making a mistake. We all make mistakes, and it's how you deal with those mistakes that can define you sometimes.
Brilliant stuff, Barry Swain. Thank you for coming on the podcast. Just mentioning about the heat right now, it's in the peak of the June heat wave. England have just drawn to Ghana 0-0. How's your World Cup going, Barry, from a personal and professional point of view?
Personal and professional. The only matches I've watched, apart from the England-Ghana match, which was dreadful, up until that point, I've done really well. I commentated on a couple of really good games. Can't remember the Dutch. They drew 2-2, didn't they, in their first game? Really good game. Did they draw 2-2? I think it was 2-2. But anyway, it was that good a game. I've forgotten it. Japan, that's it. That was a really good game. The first England game against Croatia, done that one. Really good game as well. A couple of others. So far, I've picked the good games until last night. That 0-0 draw between England and Ghana, which was a horrible game to watch. But we're still in it. Everyone's due a bad day, and hopefully that was England's bad day.
Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, in the last couple of tournaments we've had pretty much a replica result in the second match week. How do you find the hydration breaks and commentating on that?
Well, it's a break, isn't it? I mean, you've got to keep talking for 3 minutes. I tend to use it as a recap. But that can be difficult if it's 0-0 and not a lot has happened. I could do without it, to be honest. You're kind of scraping the barrel and saying things like that automatically adds 3 minutes to your 45, so you're going to get at least 3 minutes of added time. It's a bit tedious for a commentator, if I'm totally honest with you. But those temperatures out there, they do need those breaks.
Of course. Especially for last night's game in the goalless draw, you can only really talk about Ghana sitting in a low block and not much else. But yeah, of course, just for people, I suppose, listening, you're now working with, of course, GB Vision. You're one of the main guys there, the main guy in the UK, and that's obviously who I do freelance work for as well. So do you do any other what other freelance work do you do at the moment, Barry, apart from GB Vision? Just so people know.
Look after a team of about 40 there, and we cover all sorts of games, from the Premier League to the Champions League, and then into Brazil, and all leagues around the MLS, all leagues around Europe, and indeed the world. So that's really interesting. It's all done from home. We've got a really good team of 40, including yourself.
Cheers.
We've got a really good team. A very reliable team as well. One of them's just messaging me now. You probably heard a beep in the background. So it keeps me on my toes. But I also do, through Talksport, a little bit of Premier League for their overseas broadcasting and the app, the Premier League app. Occasionally EFL through IMG. What else are we doing? That keeps me pretty busy. Football Live, which is a big show in Africa on Brula FM that goes out every Saturday. I kind of oversee that. It's a project I stumbled across about 3 or 4 years ago, and I try and present once a month if I can. If it's a spare Saturday I've got or Sunday, and I love that because the viewing figures, the listening figures, are somewhere in the region of 7 to 10 million. Last time they were, so it's a big thing over in Africa, the radio, because a lot of people don't have television, a lot of people don't have internet, so radio is their means of following football, and so that show is a big thing for them, and it's great to present a live show. Although it's not commentary, it's something that I really enjoy doing. I've got a guy called John Kane, who's one of our commentators at GB Vision, that looks after most of the shows. He's brilliant. He's kind of retired in Spain, so it's a great little project for him, and he's brilliant for me, and he looks after it, and it goes very well, and every year they come back for more, which is great. Excellent. So it looks like we've got that again next season.
Brilliant. I mean, you mentioned the term stumbling across. I think that sometimes happens a lot with people in the industry. They can stumble across opportunities. We'll get to that in just a bit, because I think it'd be good to kind of know how you started. So when did you kind of think you wanted to go into this industry?
I've got this great story, actually. My mum and dad had a big garden, And I tell you that it's all about fruit trees. This is 2 plum trees, 2 green gage trees, 2 apple trees, and 3 pear trees. They're all gone now. I'm sad to say. My mum's just completed 50 years in that house. And those 2 plum trees right in the middle were my goal. And I used to run around the garden and commentating as well, and that's kind of how I got into it, but never really thought for one moment that I would end up being a football commentator. So that kind of, as I got older, stopped running around the garden so much and it disappeared. I then got involved in I'm a hitching, born and bred in Hertfordshire, so I got involved in the club there, hitching in now. Well, it was Isthmian League at the time, and I was quite lucky because in the 90s when I was the media contact there, the media officer, it is press officer it used to be called, they had 2 great runs in the FA Cup. They beat Hereford, who were in the Football League. They beat Bristol Rovers, who were in the Football League. It was on Match of the Day, and of course as media officer I was speaking to Match of the Day and also 3 Counties Radio, and it ended up off the back of that they were asking me to go on regularly, do reports that turned into BBC London, BBC Manchester down the years, and eventually into commentary, and that's how I kind of come across it. But there is a 20-year gap somewhere in the middle there, 10, 15, 20-year gap in the middle. But it kind of started when I was probably about 10, running around the garden. Those 2 plum trees have got a lot to answer for.
Oh, that's sweet. That's sweet. Going back to your roots, literally. I mean, that's cool. I suppose with Hitchin getting an FA Cup run, or a couple of good cup runs, then being able to have that catapult you into the career you're in now. What was that kind of step up like, going from Hitchin, being their press officer, to then getting your first real job at the BBC?
Well, when I was at Hitchin, they used to ring me up. The mobile phones were just coming in then, and they'd ring me up 2 or 3 times during the game and ask me for a quick 20-second update, and that was great. I was quite comfortable doing that, and I hadn't worked in radio or spoke publicly in the past, but I felt comfortable, and it's something I enjoyed doing. I left the club in 2000 and immediately went on to BBC London and BBC Manchester. I always remember my first game, actually. It's a great story, and I've told it a few times. I can remember the player involved too, and I'll mention him in a minute. I got called in to do the first game of the season, Watford against Barnsley, in what is now the Championship. It was probably Division 1 then. So this would be 2000, and it was 0-0. Another 0-0, because the 3 games that I covered for BBC 3 Counties in their radio car, I went out in the radio car 3 times, 3 0-0 draws. So here we go again, another 0-0. Every time I get my lucky break, it's 0-0. And it was the 90th minute, and they come to me live and said, yeah, this one's heading for a 0-0. And as I looked up, Dominic Foley hit one from 30 yards into the top corner, and suddenly I'm commentating. Inadvertently, I'm commentating. So that's my first exposure to commentary, and Watford won 1-0. First ever goal. It took 4 games to get a goal. And never looked back from there. I was a regular on BBC London, and they were different times. In the year 2000, they were struggling to find reporters and people that they could pay to go and watch a football match. And that sounds ludicrous now, because there are so many people chasing that dream, and back then I kind of just stumbled across it and walked into it, and I was very lucky. And like everything else, and I always say the story about Brian Moore, my favourite commentator. If you ever listen to his commentaries in the late 60s and early 70s, they're terrible, but rather like my reporting, I got the chance, like Brian did, to carry on and become more and more experienced, and you can only get better than you were at the beginning. And Brian Moore in the end was just one of the very, very best.
Yeah, of course. I think you're so right in about the young commentators wanting to come through now. There are so many, and it's so competitive compared to perhaps how it was 20 or 30 years ago. What do you think? I suppose that's because of. I know obviously there's more media. Would you say that's the main reason?
Yeah, there's more media. So. There's so many people that want to get into it. So I never say no. I get a lot of people. I mean, we're talking, I don't know, 5 a week. I get emails sent to me, and I never say no. And the reason I never say no is once somebody said no to me, and I ended up working in the same place as them and overtaking them and bettering them, and I think they felt a bit guilty. I never said anything, but I don't want that to ever happen to me. And so I always say to people, look, I'll be honest with you, you need more practice. I'm never going to say, no, you're rubbish, you're never going to make it. But you can tell, I can tell a commentator the potential of that commentator before I've even listened to them. Have they sent a show reel? If they haven't sent a show reel, are they actually aware of what they're trying to get into. And if they've sent the show reel, you can usually tell within 5 seconds if they've got the voice, if they've got the right tone, and the experience, and not just of talking and commentating, but of football itself. You've got to be, if you're a solo commentator, which so many of us are, and I very rarely work with a co-commentator, occasionally, but not very often. You've got to be a bit of a pundit as well. So you've got to give an opinion as well. And so you've got to be a bit of a football expert. You've got to have a good voice. You've got to hold your audience. So you've got to have that element of excitement. Somebody wants to listen to you, and you've got to hold that audience. And you can't do that by being monotone. And so many people send a demo through, and after 5 seconds you just go back to him and say, look, you've got to be more excited. This is my feedback. I'm going to give you feedback. I'm going to be constructive. But the fact is that anyone coming into the industry now, it's saturated with commentators, and commentators like yourself, like many others, are of a very, very high level, and they've worked hard to get to that level. And if you want to play the ball with those guys, you've got to be as good, if not better than them. You can't come in down at the bottom and expect to get your lucky break. I got my lucky break when I probably was down there 25 years ago, and worked my way up. But you don't get that now. And a lot of people are trying to get into the paid business before they've even done the voluntary business. And I always say, look, go along to one of I helped set up something called TC Hub, the commentary hub, a bunch of commentators. Probably never going to make it, but they love commentating. And so I helped set up a channel, and I kind of, the TC Hub, they're called Russ Vernon, Mike, John, a few of the others. And I kind of act as a mentor to them. And I always point people in that direction, say, look, they're not going to pay, and you're probably going to be commentating to an audience of, 40 people. But it's a starting point. And, getting into non-league football like I did is another way of doing it. But a lot of people want to try and jump on the bandwagon, and they want to be paid from day one, and it doesn't quite work like that.
Yeah. What do you think then? Why do you think that is? Is that just sometimes people being a little bit unaware of how to really get into it?
Well, I talk to people of my generation now that have come into the industry, and when I got involved, and I know a few others, they would do anything for nothing to get something on their CV. And I've done lots of things for nothing. And I just think now that the up-and-coming generation are not quite so steered towards the voluntary work, the going out and getting your hands dirty and finding work regardless of whether you're going to get paid for it or not. And that was the foundation of what I built my career on. And my advice to anyone is just go out there. Don't worry about the money. Don't just get out there and get the experience and listen to people, listen to the advice, and gradually work your way up. There's a lot of people that are trying to jump in at the top, and even those people that are going to university 3-4 years, that's great if you've got that experience, but you've got to put it into a live environment and make it work.
And obviously you've mentored a lot of people. What do you think makes a great character to mentor?
They've got to be enthusiastic is the first thing, and when I say enthusiastic, I mean off the camera or off the microphone, and on it. They've got to have a good knowledge of with football, tennis, whatever it is. They've got to have a good sporting knowledge, and they've got to be willing to learn and willing to take criticism. I've sometimes turned around to people and said, look, you don't want to do it like that, you want to do it like that, that's whatever it is, and they don't like that criticism. It's above them. They're not having that, and they will carry on. Most people do listen, but to be a consummate professional, you've got to be able to learn and listen. And, people are still advising me. I'm still learning. I've done, 2,000 games. I need to look it up. I've got it all written down somewhere, probably about 2,000 live games. And that's staggering, really, when you think about it. And if I look through the list, I think I can't remember anything about that game, or that game, or that game. And that's from last season. So, you've got all those games under your belt, and you're still learning. So the thing is, you never stop learning in this industry. And listen, I always think a good commentator is good at moving away from making a mistake. And I say this, and I'm not going to pick on him, but Guy Mowbray last night for the England game, and he shouted out, I think it was Harry Kane had a shot which deflected wide for a corner. I don't know how he said it, and it was really out of character. He said he's at the bar. It was nowhere near the bar, but he carried on. And he put that behind. He knew he'd made a rick, and he probably knew that social media would have a go. And a few people did, not as much as I thought they would. Everyone makes that mistake. I've made that mistake 100 times. He's made that mistake on BBC One, and he's just got on with it. You've got to put that to one side and forget about it and move on and be the professional. And he was, and he's a great commentator, by the way. Guy Mowbray, I'm not having a go at him at all. But we all make mistakes, and it's how you deal with those mistakes that can define you sometimes.
What would you say is a classic example of someone who hasn't been able to deal with that mistake, and compare it to, well, I suppose you used the example already of Guy Mowbray, but how can you tell if someone has already kind of made the mistake and then hasn't been able to react to it well?
Well, it's usually they quickly spiral, and a lot of the youngsters. I used to do commentary workshops, and we used to do it in a studio or in a hired room when we used to have videos we'd watch, but it weren't great. We want to be at a football match, so I started doing it in non-league games, and it proved quite popular. But you could tell, and you listen to these people, once they've made a mistake, they quickly spiral out of control and lose their momentum, and they lose their confidence, and they've got to pull it back. And it's not always easy if you're, I mean, some of the guys on there were 13, 14, 15, 16, they were their parents, and it's difficult for them to turn it around. You just got to encourage them to forget about that mistake. Don't worry about that mistake. That's happened. You can't do anything to correct that mistake. All you can do is make sure that your commentary from now on is as best as it possibly can be, and it's putting that behind you. And then so you do see those younger people spiral out of control. So, I mean, it comes with the training. So many people now coming into commentary have come through 3 years of university. That would be one thing that's drummed into them in university, is being able to overcome those issues.
And who would you say have been people that have really helped you in your time, and what's some great advice you've perhaps received that has just allowed you to get to that next level?
That's a good question. That's a great question. I mean, I always, look back at people that have been loyal to me. Pete Stevens at BBC London, it was great. And he's a great kind of, it's the way I work a little bit now. Pete was kind of old school. Scream at you down there, why aren't you there? Why you don't do that? Don't do that? And it was like, I'd done a report after a match at a Watford game. I got sent to Watford quite a lot. I'd done the report, and I rung him up and said, Pete, take the second take, because I think they've done your safety announcements. Stewards stand down about an hour after the game. Bing bong, stewards stand down in the middle of my report. So, so I stopped and I started again. And I rung up the studio, I said, take the second take. And they didn't. They put the first take out. And within 15 seconds, I'm driving up, and he's on the phone. What a bloody hell. I thought, that's me. I'm done. I'm never going to work for him again. Monday morning, phone's rung. All right, can you go to QPR this week? Yeah, I thought, great. And but that was Pete, and you had to learn. But he had you on your toes. And that was a great learn. It was like an old-fashioned headmaster. But he had a great team working within BBC London, Phil and Emma and co, and they were great, and they were a brilliant foil for him. I don't know how they put up with him, but he was a great guy, Pete. Once you got to know him, man for man, and he's retired now, and it was a good grounding for me, because it was a bit like being in the army in a way. It was a bit disciplined, and now I'm working with great people. People that show me loyalty, you try and show loyalty back, and Pete was certainly very loyal to me.
I think that's a funny story. Obviously, I think the way society can go, a lot of the kind of hair drying treatment perhaps may no longer be a thing, but I think that's probably one of the best ways I can react to something, if someone just says it straight up like that. How did you feel on that day after he had that rant at you, before you knew that you were going back to QPR? How would you have been feeling? Because if that was me, that would have been eating me up all day, and I don't know how
it was. That was a Saturday evening. I think it was the Monday or the Tuesday. The phone rang. I would have email pinged. I can't remember what it was. It was going back 20 plus years. And I got a game. Oh, great, brilliant. He's not given up on me. I genuinely, I didn't say I'm never using you again. It's just the way that he was. But that was the way that he managed people, and you got used to that, but you work that little bit harder to impress him. It was when you were at school, you're trying to impress that teacher. He was a little bit like that, and it is old school. I've probably taken a couple of little traits out of the way that he does things, in the way that I run my team, but I don't rant at people. But sometimes you just got to be constructive and say, don't do that. don't do that, do it this way, or my advice to you is do it this way. And you just got to be stern, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I don't rant at people. But Pete was great at that, and that was a rant that probably stood me in good stead, because I literally thought I'm never going to get to a football match and commentate or report on a game ever again, and it stood me in good ground.
So coming to now, what does a typical week look like in Barry Swain's life? I know you've got a family, which I kind of want to touch upon in a bit, about how you kind of cope, or not cope, but kind of handle the commentating career you've got. But as for now, what does a typical week look like in a professional sense?
It's kind of changed in the last few weeks, because I worked for the Press Association, or a company that got swallowed up by the Press Association, and I got made redundant just before COVID time, so about 7 years ago. And I've been freelancing, mainly commentary, but a few other bits and pieces, Football Live and a few other pieces, for 7 odd years. And I've gone back into work part-time last few weeks, working for a charity. Not full-time, just getting 5 days a week from 9 till 3 and 9 till 1 a couple of days. And that works really well, because it's actually similar to what I'm doing for GB Vision. I'm looking after a team of people and scheduling their weeks and their days and their week every week. So it's something I enjoy doing, organising and scheduling. And before that, I was scheduling for TV listings as well. The Press Association, the arm of the Press Association that got swallowed up by the Press Association, a company called EBS, worked for them for 18 years. They were specialists in television schedules, amongst other things. So that kind of got me into media as well on a full-time basis. So I was very, very lucky. So I work for the charity now, and that works really well, because most of my commentary is evenings and weekends. And like you touched upon, I've got a young family. My son's 8 and my daughter's 11. Now I don't like to work every weekend if I can help it. Most Saturdays, I know I can jump on the train at 12 and I'm at home at 7, so it's not too bad. I try and take the odd Saturday off and try not to work too many Sundays. And now I'm working in the week, probably more so next season. I will try not to work every weekend. So you've got to think of your young family. And it was quite funny, actually, because my son's been tested for dyslexia in the last couple of years, which is not a major thing. So he's had the tests, and I'd done the test as well, and it came out that I'm heavily dyslexic as well. And as a result, it's like, oh, I'm 50 years of age, and I didn't realise I was dyslexic, and so I've kind of realised that, wow, that's a bit weird, but I've coped with it, and it's so it's something that I'm very proud of, that I didn't realise. You probably hear him screaming in the background now, arguing with his sister behind closed doors. I hope you can't pick that up, but I can in my ear.
Don't worry.
And we've
all been there. We've all been there.
Yeah, siblings. So if you can hear screaming, I do apologise. But that's great. I mean, he's a lovely lad, and he's not got it heavily, but it's there, and it's something that we can cope with. And I realised I've got it. How does that affect me? Not majorly, because I've got my coping mechanisms, and they've come along as a matter of course. And
what are they?
So yeah, it's things like you forget something. Someone will put a through ball through, and Harry Kane will score, and you think, who put that through ball again? But you've got that coping mechanism. You might point your finger at the team sheet in front of you and deal with it that way. So yeah.
That's interesting. So with dyslexia, I knew it was always associated with reading, but can it also be associated with other things, like seeing an image of a player run forward?
A little bit, not too. Most of the time I'm pretty good, but occasionally I'll just have a memory seizure, and I think, who put that ball through? And I think that probably comes down to dyslexia, and I've not looked into it a great deal, but I don't like reading an awful lot. If I have to really shut myself away to read something, if I'm given something to read, then I have to really concentrate. I don't read many books. I don't read many articles where I can help it. That's just the way it is, and that makes sense. When I read it up and done the tests and everything, it just all made sense. But it doesn't change anything. It just it's what I am. And nowadays, so many kids have got ADHD, dyslexia, autism, and it's commonplace. And just they've got the support. I didn't have the support because no one knew, and it's just coping mechanisms. That's all it is.
So, would you say now with the World Cup, what time off do you have? Do you have much time off from the commentating at all?
I'm not doing too much. Obviously, scheduling the schedules for the commentators. I'm doing the odd game, one or two a week. I'm trying to do an overnight one at the weekend and one in the midweek with my work schedule as well. So with the hot weather, you don't want to be doing too much. And
Yeah.
so I'm quite happy with that. And maybe I might slow down a little bit in general next season. Now I'm working more, but. It's still my love of my life, my family, and my commentary. I love my commentary. I wouldn't be doing it otherwise, and I absolutely love it.
And how do you? I suppose, can you balance that? Do you still? Do you think it fits in well with your life to an extent where you can still see your family? Because I suppose the reason why I ask this question is a lot of people, myself included, will be approaching those years where they're probably going to start having kids now, and they do want to commentate. They may also have to have another job as well, because one or two contracts might not be enough to support a family. Right. So what would you say to those people? But also, just before that, I know I'm doing two questions in once here. How do you find it? And then we'll go from there.
Well, the last 7 years, because my daughter's just coming up to 12 now, so much of her life I've been freelancing. So I've done the school run and worked it around that, and it's worked really well. It's flipped on its head now. My wife is currently got made redundant recently, so she's changing jobs at the moment. It's fine. She's having a bit of time off before she starts a new job. So it's flipped on its head, and she's doing that now. So it's great. You've got to make it work. You can't have it's very difficult having a family, a full-time job, and being able to commentate. But we do have people on my team that do that. They only want one game here and one game there. They're not in it for the long haul. I don't want 10 games a week. Just one game a week would be great on a Saturday or a Sunday. That would be brilliant, and that's fine. We can accommodate that. But it's individual circumstances. I mean, your partner, what are they working full time? They might be a stay-at-home partner, so that makes it a lot easier then. But it's individual circumstances. If you want it that badly, you make it work.
Yeah, totally. I think that's very fair. Brilliant. Well, Barry, I think you've covered lots of really good bases there. I think it's been really enlightening, and you've been really enthusiastic, as you say others should be. I can see the enthusiasm coming from you, but I appreciate you coming in the gantry with me, albeit remote. And it was great to just cover all the bases, really. How the advice you give to people, how to kind of get into that industry and doing the unpaid, and also I think it's really important to touch upon family life combined with commentary, because it's good to hear other people who are going through that and how they cope, as you mentioned earlier. So, Barry, thank you very much, my friend. Really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Take care.
Well, thank you everyone for watching or listening, depending on where you are viewing this. Really do appreciate it. Really do appreciate Barry for coming on. Really good conversation, touching upon parenthood and the juggling act, really, between parenthood and being a parent, and of course commentating as well. That's just a part of the career. And like he said, if you want it enough, you will have to, of course, work around that and make it work. So yeah, really appreciate Barry for coming on, and also really appreciate our other guests as well. Had some great conversations so far with Tyler Morris and Emily Herbert. Many more to come. Already got a few in store, ready and waiting. They'll be out fortnightly. So thank you very much for joining me in the gantry this week, and we're looking forward to the next one already. Please do like and subscribe if you're watching or listening to this on YouTube, and also please do give this a follow if you're listening to this on Spotify. All of those engagements and interactions really do help me out getting this podcast up and running. Thank you everyone. Take care.